YouTube. And I also want to, first of all, before I start, I want to thank ATX Alive and especially Dr. Linda Carney for the opportunity to be here today. And I am 35 years old, 35 and a half actually. That matters. And I've been vegan for the animals for the last 10 years. And I'm so happy to share with you today this little piece of my story. But first I want to dedicate this presentation to, I dedicate myself to, and this presentation to you and to all those suffering and fighting for answers, as well as caregivers, advocates, and supporters. My healing story is a little bit extensive. And there's so much I really do want to share with you today, but for the sake of the focus for today, I'm primarily going to talk about autoimmune diseases and how I overcame them with my diet. I'll go ahead and list all of this off. It really is a living nightmare looking back on all of it. I really, looking at this, I just want to detach myself from all of it and be like, this is not me anymore. You know, I don't identify this as me anymore, but multiple sclerosis, Hashimoto's hypothyroidism, hypoglycemia, pre-diabetes type 2, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, hypertension, acid reflux, acne, not only as a teen, but also as an adult, alcoholism and drug abuse, benzo withdrawal. If anyone's taken a benzo, that's just, the withdrawal is like way worse than the medication. Obesity, depression, anxiety, panic attacks, PTSD, insomnia, violent nightmares, night terrors, narcolepsy, which means that I am actually allowed to fall asleep during in the middle of my own presentation today. So, but y'all aren't, so stay with me. Obstructive sleep apnea, pansinusitis. I mean, it's amazing how much I've been able to go through and survive. This is the extremely abridged version of my backstory. This usually takes a lot longer, but I wanted to give you a little bit of a backstory on my childhood and what happened before my diagnosis of autoimmune diseases. So, unstable childhood, my parents divorced, and I was not an active, happy, or healthy child. I was on the standard American diet for the first 2 decades of my life. I was overeating for comfort, especially for emotional comfort to deal with my unhappiness. I was really confused about protein and healthy fats as well. My mother was a nurse, by the way, so they know everything. So I learned everything about protein and fats from my nurse mother, and unfortunately the information that she was given was incorrect. So I believe we needed to have like animals, like that was protein. And I didn't understand that there was protein in vegetables and fruits. I had depression, anxiety, panic attacks, violent nightmares, hallucinations, insomnia, all before the first grade. Yeah, it was rough. But it's okay now, by the way, spoiler alert. Chronic hypoglycemia by the 5th grade. I was carrying around glucose packets in my backpack at school because my blood sugar would drop in the middle of class and I just have to like get a little glucose packet out and suck on it and get my blood sugar back up. It was not a pretty picture. Children shouldn't have to be dealing with these medical problems. Right. I was told by my pediatrician that by the 6th grade that I was pre-diabetic, according to my labs and everything, and that I would probably need to medicate for the rest of my life once I became a fully diabetic person, and I was told to eat more protein and healthy fats. At 16, I was prematurely aging. My partner, Corey, is here with me today. We met at 16. So he knows what I look like at 16 years old.
Wow.
And he likes to tell me nowadays that I actually look younger now than when I was at 16. And I think y'all have all been 16, right? Yeah. Like, so it's kind of a traumatizing state to be in. You're very emotionally sensitive and everything. One of the hardest moments that is scarred into my memory is one time Corey and I were both 16 and we were getting on a metro bus, public transportation. And the bus driver asked me, "Ma'am, is that your son?" Oh. He's 9 months older than me. Oh, that's not mathematically possible. And also I died. I was so humiliated. I went vegetarian at 19, and I was still believing at that time that I would die without eating meat for protein, but by then I was really depressed and I didn't care. Turns out I didn't die. Shocking. But I mean, I didn't know any better. I self-medicated my symptoms of crushing fatigue and also depression with drugs, and I had uppers, caffeine, and downers, alcohol, through the teens and 20s. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's hypothyroidism, which was my first autoimmune disease. Very early 20s, I was on a mix of either Armour or Synthroid, Levoxyl, or levothyroxine for over a decade after this, solidly. And the worst symptom for me was crushing fatigue, but also brain fog. I went vegan for the animals at age 25 after reading a book called Skinny Bleep. You are more than welcome to look that up. It really, I honestly think this book for me really drove home the dairy industry for me, because I spent time on a farm when I was little, and I didn't understand the dairy industry as it was a large-scale issue. I didn't understand how it affected my health. I didn't get it, and so that book really was the key that woke me up. I was actually in the bathtub reading it, and there's a chapter on dairy, and I was reading that chapter, and I just started crying in the bathtub, and from that moment on, I was vegan. Some kid pictures just to show you. I was born on February 20th, 1984, and I was an animal lover from a very early age. Pretty much every kid picture I have involves an animal. And I was actually on a farm. And I chose these pictures in particular because they showed my physical progression, that I was becoming more plump as a child. I looked more old before my time. I felt like my hair was going gray in middle school. But this is a picture of me at 16 years old and 25. And at 25, I noticed that my skin especially was just always very shiny and pimply. And by then, all of my peer class had gotten past that phase, because everyone, they grew up and their skin kind of evened out, but mine still wasn't doing that. And I think I was even vegan in that picture. And for me, going vegan didn't clear up my acne. A lot of people say, just quit dairy and your acne will clear up. And it's for me, it was more complicated. These are my before pictures that I took. I was over 200 pounds at this point. I think the max that I ever saw the scale was around 218, 220, but then I stopped looking. So I don't actually know what my true top weight was. It was just after my 30th birthday, and I was so tired of being an unhealthy vegan. And I actually decided that I was going to take these before pictures, and I was going to go on this new program, and I started using Beachbody's Shakeology. They have a vegan meal replacement to lose weight, and I was not successful. So 30 and a half years old, on September 8th of 2014. I'd already been vegan for 5.5 years for the animals. I was eating more fresh fruits and vegetables than ever before. And I lost function over the left side of my body from the neck down, and I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. It was my second autoimmune disease. How did this happen? I did everything right, I went vegan, right? That's supposed to fix everything. That's what we're told, right? Autoimmune basics. Autoimmune diseases affect about 50 million Americans, according to the American Autoimmune Related Disease Association. I think that's a very conservative estimate, though, just from what I've seen and what I've talked with people. I feel like so many are undiagnosed. And about 75 to 80% of these are women. They don't know why that is. Autoimmune essentially is the overactivity of the immune system. It overcreates antibodies which attack and damage the body's own tissues. And many treatments actively suppress the immune system, and others mask symptoms, provide chemicals that the body can no longer make. This is a very overgeneralized summary, by the way. They are considered incurable, and the causes are considered unknown. There are, though, correlations for genetics, environmental factors, stress, and to a lesser extent, diet. Inflammation is always present during a flare-up or attack because your immune system is fighting itself. It's like an internal war. It's going to inflame you. Disease-influencing factors. So, of course, we have our genetic lottery, everything that you have at the moment of your birth that you can't do anything about. If you're born without an arm, that's something that you have and that you have to deal with. We also have epigenetics. We can modify gene expressions, turn them on and off. Maybe you have some gene that says you have this, you might be susceptible to this kind of cancer, but depending on your lifestyle, you might not get it. It might not express itself. There's the environment. You can't really control where on the planet that you're born. You don't really have that decision, but there's air quality, pollution, your access to sunlight, the weather conditions. People in the far north, they don't have a lot of access to sunlight sometimes, and that can affect their vitamin D levels, for example. Social influences and upbringing. You have peer pressure. You have, are you gonna eat those chicken nuggets? You have your society that you were brought up in. You have your family traditions. You can't really decide what sort of an environment you're brought up in. And then there's emotional traumas, things that affect your stress levels and things that affect your emotional stability. Family tragedies, abuse, PTSD. You can't control any of those things. Adaptation and coping mechanisms or with learned behaviors. Some people might take up emotional eating or binge eating or eating higher fat foods for emotional comfort. When you're young, though, can you really blame a kid for not knowing any better and finding a tool that tends to help them and work better for them? I don't think we can really blame kids for doing what they do. But then we have diet, fitness, and lifestyle, and what you choose as an adult. Now that you have the capability to choose and decide for yourself and find the information, it's in your court now. And that saying, it's not that diabetes, heart disease, or an obesity run in your family, it's that no one runs in your family. It's kind of accusatory, right? Yeah, but there comes a point when we as adults, we have to take responsibility for the circumstances that we were brought up in. There's so many things that I couldn't control about my upbringing. I couldn't control what I was told as a child. I couldn't control the things that I learned to cope with my issues and my emotional traumas. But now that I know better, I'm gonna do better. Going vegan wasn't enough for me. And that was hard. And especially on social media. Do you ever see when people come out with a new diagnosis and people will come out and say, especially us in the vegan community, you see, oh, well, if you just go vegan, that problem will just go away.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can just cure it with just going vegan. And for me, that was a myth. For me, I didn't get better. And I wouldn't say I got worse, but I definitely didn't get better. After going vegan in 2009, with 25 years old, I ate anything as long as it was vegan, thinking it was essentially diet food. My health continued to deteriorate, and I coped by increasing my caffeine and alcohol intake as uppers and downers. The average vegan nowadays consumes about 50 to 60 grams of fiber a day, while our paleo ancestors consumed over 100 grams of intact fiber per day. And although I was consuming more fresh fruits and veggies than I ever had in my life, my fat and salt intake were still quite high from the processed vegan junk foods and fiber extracting and grinding food industry practices. You know, flour would be a great example. You know, just because it's vegan doesn't mean it's necessarily healthy. It's got all that fiber ground up and or extracted or pulled out, and it's like it's no longer a whole food anymore. Both my endocrinologist and neurologist had recommended high amounts of protein like nuts and seeds. Anyone want to tell me what's wrong with that?
High fat.
Nuts and seeds are fats. As well as extracted processed healthy fats like olive oil and coconut oil to help my thyroid and brain heal from the autoimmune attacks. And sadly, I complied, and I only felt worse and worse. I kid you not, I would measure out a 4th cup of olive oil every day at the recommendation of my endocrinologist, and then later on with my neurologist with the coconut, 2 spoons of coconut oil. Yeah, I measured them out and actually consumed them. It was horrendous. So, in the hospital, with my 2nd diagnosis of an autoimmune condition, this one leaving me disabled, I didn't know if I would ever get my mobility back. Spoiler alert, I did. But, I mean, I had a huge decision to make because, I mean, I heard about these raw vegans and these fruitarians, and honestly, I always thought they were really strange. But they were like, just being in the community, I heard all these stories about people reversing diseases by going raw and fruitarian, and it sounded crazy. It really did. And I thought, well, I guess, why not try it? I mean, at this point, I have nothing left to lose. I didn't know if I was going to get my mobility back. I didn't know, but whatever I was doing right now was not working, and I knew that. And if I'm wrong, I'm just eating tons of fruits and vegetables, which are probably good for me anyway. But what if it really works? I mean, I was desperate enough to find out through my own self-experimentation, and what I had decided was that if MS takes me down, I want to be able to say I tried everything. Yeah, everything, even doing that weird thing going raw. I mean, on October 12th of 2014, this was a little over a month after I went to the hospital and I was diagnosed. And this is protocol when you get diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, by the way. A nurse comes to your house and they teach you how to inject yourself with something like Copaxone or whatever your neurologist prescribed to you for your MS journey. And so that nurse came over and taught me how to inject myself. And that was also the same day I decided that I was going to do everything in my power to help heal myself. And if I was desperate enough to take those MS drugs, I was also going to go raw vegan for my health. I'm just going to throw everything at the wall and just see what sticks. I mean, this was my first raw haul. And it's a lot of greens and a lot of fruits and some non-sweet fruits, some vegetables. I'm actually pretty impressed with it, looking back. I did pretty good that day. What is a raw foods diet? Honestly, I didn't really know it when I first started this. I just knew that I was going to do it. And the answer depends entirely upon who you ask, as there are many variations of what people consider a raw foods diet. Generally, most everyone can agree that raw means not heated, over 118 degrees specifically, and that it is uncooked. And most raw diets do include fresh, raw fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. Vegan or plant-based style is the most common. Some people consume raw meat, dairy, fish, eggs, organs, and other various raw animal products against the advice of even non-vegan medical doctors. Ew, gross, and please don't. Acceptable processing on a raw foods diet. Blending, everyone have a Vitamix?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We call it my baby. Yeah. Juicing is also acceptable, although some people will debate the temperature of the juicer, that it brings the juice up to a higher temperature. Technicalities. Unpasteurized is really acceptable. Dehydrating under 118 degrees, fermenting, soaking, sprouting, lentils, and legumes are also included as long as they are sprouted. We don't want to eat them unless they're sprouted because apparently that's toxic. And also, ow. As long as it's raw foodists will find a way to eat it. And some raw foodists include a lot of flavorings. Some people will buy a salad dressing in a bottle from a grocery store with the oil and the salt and the preservatives and everything and pour it over vegetables and call it a raw food dish. And that I don't do those things. Some people do. That's why it depends entirely upon who you ask about what is raw. 75 to 100%, depending on season and availability of my diet, is plain fruit. I am considered fruitarian or fruit-based because the overwhelming majority of my calories come from both sweet and non-sweet fruits. And non-sweet fruits are like tomatoes, which is like my favorite fruit ever, squash, cucumbers, okra, eggplant, and even pumpkins. And they are often considered culinary vegetables, but botanically they are fruits. Fruits have seeds and grow on a vine, and when you eat a vegetable, you're eating the whole plant. As with all diets, you can be an unhealthy raw foodist or fruitarian, as there are many ways to technically follow them. And if I'm only eating avocados and coconut meat and durian, then I can be considered a raw vegan fruitarian, but my fat intake would be off the charts, and that is not healthy. So why fruit-based? Depending on the fruitarian you ask, some will have reasons based on evolution, while others follow religious or biblical guidance. Humans are biologically frugivores, 25 million years evolving from great ape ancestors. The first 90% of human existence followed a fruit-based diet. Two amazing videos that I highly recommend. One is on Dr. John McDougall's YouTube channel. It is Dr. Milton Mills, going through all of the specifics about are humans designed to eat meat, and explains our biology a lot more in depth. For the sake of time today, I don't really want to go into that in a whole lot of detail. Also, nutritionfacts.org has a great video, Paleo Duty, what we can learn from our fossilized feces. And I highly recommend just watching these two videos. I think it helps put things in perspective. And the other school of thought is in Genesis 1:29-30, and God said, "Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed, and to you it shall be for meat. To you it shall be your meat." And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat. And it was so. So essentially the Garden of Eden, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we're just raw vegan fruitarians walking around in peace and harmony with all the other animals who were apparently herbivores. So it's a very non-violent way of existence that our species has originated with. And so however you view it, the human species diet from the beginning appeared to be a fruit-based, raw vegan, fruit-based diet, and our digestive organs most closely resemble those of other primate frugivores. I think that's why I didn't put this in the later part of the presentation, but I had a lot of gas, bloating, and digestive upset before, and I thought that was all normal for the first 3 decades of my life. And after eating more fruits and having a nice, cleaner, moving digestive tract, I don't have that anymore. And I noticed it now that it's no longer there. But I had just gotten used to it. I thought that was just how people were. We were always in pain and cramped up. So what's wrong with veggies? Does anyone know?
No.
Yeah, exactly. It's a trick question. Yeah, nothing at all. There's nothing at all wrong with vegetables. Veggies are healthy. They're very healthy. They're necessary nutritional complements, and especially to fruit, and especially for minerals like calcium, iron, magnesium, zinc, and selenium. So don't ever get convinced that by other fruitarians that eating vegetables is bad or something, because that's just not true. Although there are a few fallen fruits only fruitarians, that means that they will not eat the fruit until the tree has given it willingly. They're out there on social media. It's not as common, and it's not considered nutritionally complete or sustainable. Nearly all of those who identify as fruitarian or fruit-based, eating more than 75% of their volume of fruit, include some tender leafy greens and other vegetables. If not daily, then seasonally. One of the biggest rookie mistakes that most new raw vegans and fruitarians make is eating way too much fat from nuts, seeds, avocado, coconut meat, and some people will even buy those oils in the store that are refrigerated and it says raw on them. It's still extremely processed, but it's raw. Doesn't mean it's healthy. And they don't eat enough calories from low-fat fruits and vegetables. High-fat diets are not known to be healthy or sustainable, and they do end up making cravings worse. I don't know if you are like me, but whenever I eat an avocado, I want another one. It's you can't eat just one. You just want to keep eating them. And then the next day, you're I really want more. So veggies are not as calorically dense as fruits. And so if you're only eating raw fruits and veggies, if you only eat raw veggies and you're avoiding eating fruits, you may likely have intense cravings because the body is starving for glucose. And eating enough fruit is key to keeping cravings at bay. This is why the focus for fruit-based diets, or a lot of the healthier low-fat raw diets, the focus is on fruits for the fuel, and then the veggies are the nutritional complement. Is raw better than cooked? It's another trick question. Not always. Of course, eat your fresh fruits and vegetables, but that doesn't necessarily mean that a raw diet is suitable for everybody. Some people really do need to eat cooked plants, and it's for their digestive or nutritional reasons. Raw veggies are harder to digest than cooked veggies, and some nutrients become more bioavailable when you cook them, and others become less so. So it's really not a simple, straightforward answer, everyone should be a fruitarian. I can't stand up here and say that because that's just not true. And the raw food community, admittedly, is full of pseudoscience and myths and justifications for why eating raw is always superior to eating cooked foods. And unfortunately, personal feelings don't equal science. And another great video by registered dietitian Brenda Davis on VegSource's YouTube channel is Raw Food Diets, Myths, and Realities. Full talk. And she's the author of Becoming Raw, which is an excellent book, The Essential Guide to Raw Vegan Diets. If you're gonna do it, you wanna do it right. Anecdotally, and this is just from my personal experience, coming from autoimmune diseases and sleeping, breathing, and depression disorders, fatigue is a huge daily battle for me. And I have personally found that my energy level significantly lowers after eating cooked foods. Even steamed or boiled non-starchy vegetables in plain water with no salt. Starchy veggies and lentils make me feel more tired, and legumes make me feel very tired. That's just anecdotally. I don't think that that's true for everybody. And for me, for my particular battles, raw fruits help to give me the most energy. When energy is a precious and limited resource, I need all the help I can get. Fruits for me are like my energy drink or wakefulness stimulant. Some people take pills and I take fruit. So these are my actual Facebook posts from day 3 and day 10 of embarking on this journey. And simple fruit-based meals like this plate of mangoes and papaya make me feel my best. In the beginning, I would start out with the right idea, like this salad of fruits and greens, but then I would do something like pour nuts, seeds, and avocado dressings on top and unnecessarily increase the fat intake for the sake of familiar textures and comforts or satiation. And over time, my taste buds did change. And now I prefer to keep my foods as simple as possible. My concept of satiation also changed during this time. I don't know if you feel like satiation is like that warm feeling of just like, oh, I'm full, I'm a little sleepy, I'm comforted. And my concept of satiation nowadays is I'm energetic. I don't feel weighed down. I feel like I could run a marathon. And that became, over time, with practice and repetition, that became like my new comfort. Like I took comfort in having energy. Actual Facebook post, I took my injections like a good girl because I'm very compliant, but I only lasted about 4 months with the injections. My injection gun, like they give you a little injection gun and there's a little button, so you press the button and it goes pew and administers the fluid into you. My injection gun was faulty and it was going into the muscles. It's supposed to go in the adipose tissue, which is fatty tissue. It was excruciatingly painful, and they kept just telling me to suck it up. And like I had a mentor from Copaxone. I with my neurologist, they were like, "Don't be a baby about it. It's gonna hurt. It's an injection." And so I suffered with this, and I was supposed to take this injection to myself every other day of my life for the rest of my life. After 4 months of that, it was traumatizing, like on the floor screaming in agony. Like if I had an injection in my thigh, the pain was shooting down my leg and out my toes, and it was just like an electrical current just for hours after each injection. I decided while screaming and crying on the floor one day that I would rather die than suffer every other day with these painful, excruciating injections. And at the time, I still didn't know if my diet change was gonna work. And I just decided it didn't matter. It was either gonna work or it wasn't, and I didn't care. I mean, sometimes you get to a point. Over time, I started to learn how to buy more, and more fruits especially. In this picture, you can see I actually have an entire case of navel oranges on the counter in the back. Also a case of tomatoes and a case of zucchini. Those were zucchini noodles. I remember spiralizing each one and making dressings out of tomatoes blended with oranges, and the rest were just decorations. So I was on a zucchini noodle fix. And like 2 meals a day were zucchini, a big old bowl of zucchini noodles with a simple tomato and orange dressing. Another fruit haul, I think this particular haul was entirely fruits, sweet and non-sweet fruits. And one of the biggest aha moments for me was after making this diet change, my fat intake was dropping. And the lower my fat intake, the better my blood sugar. And it was like, you just kind of wake up one day, you don't really notice until it's not there anymore. And then you're like, I woke up one day, I think it was like 4 to 6 months in, and I was just like, my blood sugar hasn't gone low in a while. And it used to go low every other day. This is great. So yeah, I had to keep doing it. It was great. My cat was sitting over my fruit haul, and that's Misty. She's 17 and a half.
Aww.
She takes showers with me. She gets really mad. She gets mad, and if she can't take a shower, she has to get in the shower. She's my water baby. I did end up losing some weight, but I never felt like I got too skinny. And it took approximately 1.5 years. My weight loss was very slow and gradual. I lost about 80 pounds, and I finally felt like, oh my goodness, I've taken my life back. Like the weird thing is, like, when it's you and it's every day, and you see yourself in the mirror every day, you don't notice your progress. But as soon as I took before and after pictures and I put them side by side, then I could really see my progress. Because it's like the mind is the last to adjust to what you see in the mirror. And like when I still looked in the mirror at this point, when I was in the third picture, I still saw my sick self, my overweight, but my brain, it took a long time to catch up. So now this was 16, 25, and 31.
Wow.
Yeah, hopefully young.
There's a difference.
Wow.
There's a distinct difference.
Oh, wow.
And healthy.
And I feel like my eyes are more open. And like I'm not as my eyelids are heavy. I'm clearly not battling chronic, crushing, debilitating fatigue here. Thank you. So, raw healing rookie mistakes. I want to tell you everything that I did wrong and that I learned the hard way. Underripe fruits. It's hard at first because you don't really know, well, when is a fruit supposed to be ripe? Does this even ripen? There's all these weird little rules about different fruits, like pineapples. If they're picked too soon, even if they do ripen on the outside, they're not going to necessarily be fully ripe and lower the acidity level on the inside. There's so much to learn, but underripe fruits definitely do cause cramps, gas, and bloating for me. Mixing fats with fruits. I did that in the beginning. It did not end well. My blood sugar would just buck around and cause imbalances and also gas. But I learned the less fat in my diet, the better my blood sugar. Raw nuts in the store. So if you go on Instagram, and you click on a raw food hashtag, the majority of raw food dishes, they'll include things, a bunch of nuts and a bunch of seeds. Nuts and seeds in the grocery store, even though they say raw next to them, are not actually raw. They're blanched. And they have to be for sanitation reasons. And cashews that's a big thing in the raw community. Everyone wants a chunky cashew dressing for the extra satiation, and for me that just says I need to be weighed down. And but raw cashews are genuinely raw cashews are actually very toxic, and they have to be heated in order to be safe for human consumption. It can be a human rights issue depending on your source of cashews. There's a lot of controversy. I encourage you to look at that up. Overt, which means mostly made of, overt fats exacerbated my autoimmune symptoms, especially when in the beginning of my healing journey, when I was getting my function back on the left side of my body, and it was in and out. If I ate a meal with overt fats in it, with avocado, nuts, seeds, or coconut meat or anything like that, the next day I would have trouble moving my limb. Yeah, and of course it slows down obesity, and we don't, or losing the body fat, and we don't want that, right? But for me, and it's interesting, like when I post my before and after pictures, like on the internet, everybody is like, oh, the weight loss, but the weight loss and the weight loss, and I'm like, this was a survival thing. This had nothing to do with weight loss. It was good. It was nice. I was happy about it, but that wasn't my why. Salt and sodium products tended also to exacerbate my autoimmune symptoms. They caused bloating and water retention, and this is just my anecdotal theory. I just feel like I'm way more sensitive than most people. I feel like some people can handle a little sprinkle of salt. I don't think that I can. I definitely notice a difference. And especially when I was trying to heal from my disability, I noticed it big time. Fermented foods tended to exacerbate autoimmune symptoms. They caused upset stomach, bloating, and gas. And what I've learned over time is that it can be a probiotic overload. Like if you're constantly eating a bunch of fermented foods, fruits and vegetables already have probiotics and prebiotics. Mm-hmm. So, and then you're just like overwhelming your body with probiotics. It can be a little much. Overly complicated and gourmet raw recipes. The Instagram stuff, the stuff for show. Those were not conducive to healing. They often included fatty and salty ingredients. They were often expensive with I need you to pick this one leaf from this one continent and this one rare thing and just have a sprinkle of that. And then, there's so many ingredients. It's expensive, it takes time. Some of these amazing raw gourmet, like I've seen raw gourmet pizzas on Instagram, and it takes like 3 days to make them. Because you have to dehydrate it, and then you have to flip it and dehydrate it again and flip it and then add another layer and then flip it. I'm not waiting 3 days to eat. Raw packaged junk foods in the grocery store, generally not really raw. Raw there's not like a legal term, like a legal dietary definition, like in the grocery store in order to label something raw. It can be like fresh. This is fresh. But it's like, what does that mean? I don't know. It's like raw kale chips in a package that have been sitting there and they've been soaking in some oil for like who knows how long with a bunch of salt, and it's like, is that even kale at this point? Raw healing lessons. If I didn't eat enough calories from fruits, I didn't feel well. I had cravings. I would feel bingy. And when you're only eating fruits and vegetables, your glucose is coming from fruits. So you've got to eat enough fruits, not necessarily, overeat, but you definitely need to eat enough fruits to run your brain. The more I avoided all overt fats and salt and sodium products, the better I felt, the fewer autoimmune symptoms I had, and the faster my healing and weight loss progressed. Autoimmune symptoms seemed to be directly affected by inflammation levels. And this diet tended to keep my inflammation as low as possible. Avoiding dietary inflammation triggers was the most important lesson I discovered. And going raw and fruit-based and learning to avoid the fats and the salt and the processed foods, and the raw processed foods, that also forced me to face my emotional healing head on. Because when there's nowhere to hide, you become literally raw. You don't have any substances to dull the pain. When you eat a plate of raw fruit and you become energized, your satiation is different. You're not feeling weighed down, you're not feeling slow, you're not feeling any sluggishness. You're like, okay, so I'm feeling everything absolutely as it's happening. And when bad things came up, I could no longer take alcohol or drugs or have a fatty meal in order to calm down. I had to plow right through those emotions and deal with them. And it ended up being that a lot of old baggage came up, and I was able to process a lot of that too, especially from my childhood, which had a lot. Raw vegan healing lessons. Just take the vegan B12 supplement and get the annual blood work. There are many raw vegans and fruitarians who will say, oh, you can just get the B12 in food. You know, you can just not wash your food and do it the natural way, the way we're supposed to, like in nature. And it just, like I did admittedly test this theory early on, and sure enough, my B12 tanked on my blood work, and so just take the B12. It's okay. Buying in bulk and on sale helped to keep the prices reasonable, and when money was tight, I would always remind myself that it was cheaper than hospital bills, and bananas are so affordable. And so like I would make my diet like 50-70% bananas in order to afford a clean lifestyle the way that I was doing it. The more simple I made my meals, the easier the lifestyle became to sustain, and the less stress it created. Like, I don't know if y'all tried the yellow watermelon, but that didn't take me very long to prepare for you. It's so easy. It's like, it takes so much time out of it. So, fear of missing out. Do you ever like look at a meal sometimes and like fear, you're like, well, what if I don't eat this cupcake? Then I won't have this experience, and what if I die tomorrow? Then I won't have eaten the cupcake, and I will have missed out on this beautiful experience. Well, for me, that became fear of suffering unnecessarily tomorrow. And that became my focus. That when I was presented with temptation, that, you know, oh, that avocado, but it's a fruit. I could eat it and it'd still be fruitarian. It's raw. But, you know, I don't want to have disability tomorrow. I don't want to be fretting overnight, like, what did I do? What is this going to come back and bite me? Literally. There are no shortcuts or quick fixes. A lot of people will get caught up, especially in raw and fruitarian world, with detoxing. And they will hyper cleanse. They will become obsessed with this idea of cleansing. They will do like hourly enemas and these harsh like vinegar and salt and oil concoctions and drink it, and because they're trying to detox harder and faster, and they're just trying to clean themselves out. And it's like, you can't force this to happen. It's not recommended, it's not safe. None of those like, you know, master fast or master cleanse or whatever. It's like, just eat the fruits and the vegetables. You don't have to do anything crazy. You don't have to force it to happen. Real healing takes time, patience, and consistency. So after I went raw, vegan, and fruitarian, I met a bunch of new people. I started going to Fruit Lucks. I met Nancy at a Fruit Luck. And I started having all these wonderful experiences with other people who had gone fruit-based to heal themselves. Corey with the bananas just always cracks me up. He's just like, more, another bunch, really? He used to get on me about how much produce I would get, but he's like, no, I believe you, you're gonna eat it, it's fine. So why did this diet work for me? Well, by restricting my food to only fresh fruits and veggies, I finally learned how to eat an actually whole food, healthy, totally unprocessed diet as an ethical vegan for the animals. Because I was definitely doing the whole vegan thing wrong. I was in it for the animals, but I didn't know how to do it healthy. Psychologically, I felt liberated within these restrictions, believe it or not. And it was much easier to comply when I didn't even give myself the option to eat naughty out of fear of becoming disabled again. Like, the thought of the cupcake was just like, the cupcake doesn't exist. You might see it there, but I don't. It's not in my universe. That's not my food. That's a decoration. That's not edible. It's not for me. And eventually that becomes a habit, and your brain just immediately checks out when it sees things that are not food. Moderation doesn't work for me. I cannot eat only 1/4 of an avocado per day. It's either a whole one or none at all. Who takes 1/4 of an avocado and puts the rest back in the fridge? It's crazy. Taking the option off the table entirely was the key to my success, and embracing the abundance of thousands of varieties of low-fat fresh fruits and veggies to explore and experience. Deciding to no longer contribute to my own suffering was vital. I had to choose to live. So then everything was awesome thanks to changing my diet, and we all lived happily ever after. Or so we thought. Fast forward to January of 2019, this year. So this is an actual gym pose, like this is not me being weird. This is to see the definition of the legs, the back of the legs, and the booty, the structure of your weightlifting. I like to lift weights now. Also, it's my favorite activity for exercise. And I noticed, but this year I noticed I wasn't losing body fat anymore, and it actually seemed like I was gaining body fat. I was gaining a little muscle, but it was extremely slow. And I progress was just, it was not as it should have been. Muscle building and strength training were extremely slow. I was so consistent on my diet, y'all. Like, it seemed so unfair. And on top of that, I was growing more fatigued, and I felt like I was becoming a zombie again. And getting out of bed became difficult. I haven't been like this in years. So now I had to decide at 4.5 years in of being a raw and fruit-based person, was my diet making me deficient? Was it making me sick? Was this leading me to something bad? I had to seriously look at myself. So here's the general timeline. My nightmares and insomnia were getting worse. I was gaining weight rapidly, more rapidly through March, severe brain fog, depression, vertigo. And then I found a local vegan medical doctor, Dr. Lynn Carney. I mean, she saved my life. So we did blood work. She helped me go through blood work. She helped me get proper diagnoses. Calcium, iron, protein, fasting glucose, and A1C were all beautifully normal. Yay! Like, these were all problems before, so. My thyroid was low, though, and it hadn't been low in a long time. And I had high cholesterol and high blood pressure. So all of these things, these old issues were creeping back in, and these were just the first symptoms coming back. This was scary. I started collapsing in the gym. I fell asleep while driving. Yeah, that was scary. I was on the freeway. I was driving on the freeway. And I was unable to get out of bed most days between April and June of this past year. I called it full-on zombie mode for anyone who watches iZombie. So I talked about this on social media because I've always been very transparent about my journey, and a lot of non-vegans blamed veganism, and some would even say go raw carnivore to fix all your problems. You don't have to eat cooked food, just eat meat and dairy and eggs. Okay. Vegans blamed raw fruitarianism, as it is considered very extreme even among vegans. Raw vegans claimed that I just needed celery juice and positive thinking. Fruitarians claimed that I just needed to water fast and take magic healing herbs. Everyone had a solution, because everyone on the internet is an expert. And white coats are all evil. That's the rule of the internet. So of course I went with my vegan medical doctor. not anyone else's opinion on the internet. And I discovered that after undergoing sleep studies and CT scans, that my jaw and my airways are extremely tiny. It's not normal. The normal width from first molar to first molar is 38 to 42 millimeters, and mine's 31. Normal oropharyngeal or airway is between 10 and 12, and mine is 6.5. Yeah, but celery juice, y'all. And just, be positive.
Oh, and don't forget the magic.
Yeah, magic will fix you. So I had new diagnoses after 2 CT scans, 2 sleep studies, and 2 nasal endoscopies later. I was diagnosed with pansinusitis, deviated septum, and deformed upper airways. Also diagnosed with obstructive sleep apnea, moderate level of the lower airways. I was also diagnosed with narcolepsy, which is neurological. It is a lack of brain chemicals essential for going to sleep. My lack of breathing and sleeping issues caused my cortisol levels to skyrocket. And my thyroid, because of that, our understanding is that the thyroid was stressed because of this. The cholesterol raised, the blood pressure raised. Like, if you ever don't sleep for like a day or two, do you feel like that? Yeah, like it's awful. And I, no matter what I did, no matter what I ate, no matter how hard I worked in the gym, I couldn't lose weight. I was gaining body fat, eating like watermelon and tomatoes and cucumbers and pumping iron. And mathematically, it didn't seem possible. And I've been battling these genetic structural issues for my whole life. And my body has always adapted to survive. Up until recently, it just couldn't anymore. I have no idea why, but I mean, my doctors, my whole team credit my long-term healthy whole food plant-based diet and lifestyle for surviving this long, as these problems can be dangerous and even fatal. And they thankfully embrace lifestyle changes as treatment support. Just to tell you, in June, while I was bedbound during this time, this horrible time, and waiting for more answers, I had a friend of mine pass away. He was younger than me, and he passed away from sleep apnea, untreated. So after losing total faith in the medical industry during MS and now working with this team of vegan medical doctors, my confidence has now been restored. I will never go back to non-vegan medical doctors. These are 2 pictures on July 1st of 2019. I had surgery to correct the deformed upper airways. It's called FES, and I did that with Dr. Temez. I also now sleep with a CPAP machine to help me breathe at night for the tiny lower airways. And I manage the narcolepsy as best I can with a consistent sleep hygiene schedule, thankfully taught to me by my wonderful vegan medical doctor. And I also use a sleeping aid to come down at night, but I do not take any stimulants to stay awake. That's all the fruit. I was awake during the whole surgery, and I got my stitches taken out 4 days post-op. Normally, that is done 7 to 10 days post-op. And I also had my first sinus cleaning 4 days post-op. So I was definitely healing faster than normal. On 11 days post-op, I went back to the gym and I lifted heavy weights. On my first day back at the gym, after being mostly bedbound and totally sedentary for 3.5 months, I was able to low bar squat 85 pounds with perfect form. Wow. 11 days after surgery. 14 days post-op, on my second day back to the gym to lift heavy weights, I made a new personal record on my conventional deadlifts with no belt, and I pulled 155 pounds. I had been at a plateau. I could barely get 135 up in the air prior to all of this. So the sleeping and breathing issues and the genetic structural issues were definitely affecting me. This past week, I achieved 2 new PRs in the gym. My bench press is at 80 pounds and my barbell hip thrust at 175 for 3 sets of 5 reps. And 5 years ago today, I couldn't walk.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, looking back, it's pretty cool. Today is 76 days post-op, and I'm very grateful to be here with you today. I am still on the healing journey and will rebound and thrive once again. It is only a matter of time, patience, and consistency. And listening to your vegan medical doctor. These are examples of the kinds of simple foods that I eat nowadays. These were taken in March on the way to the gym. I really do drive with a big mixing bowl full of fruits in the passenger seat of my car. The summary of what I want to really share with you today is that a low-fat, low-sodium, whole food, plant-based diet, whether cooked or raw, is the only diet scientifically proven to prevent and reverse numerous health conditions and diseases, or at the very least, drastically improve your quality of life. Anecdotally, the raw and the fruit-based version makes me feel and perform my very best, and an active lifestyle also helps to support my brain health and muscles. There will always be disease-influencing factors that are outside of our power and control. That is never a valid reason to give up or stop trying to achieve our highest possible quality of life, and we deserve to thrive the best we can. And of course, it is the position of the American Dietetic Association that appropriately planned vegetarian diets, including total vegetarian or vegan diets, are healthful, nutritionally adequate, and may provide health benefits in the prevention and treatment of certain diseases. Well-planned vegetarian diets are appropriate for individuals during all stages of life, including pregnancy, lactation, infancy, childhood, and adolescence, and for athletes. Your story isn't over. Each day is a new opportunity to give it your all. Thank you. Great audience, by the way. I suppose it's time for questions. Yes, ma'am.
So, you mentioned like eggplant and pumpkin. You just eat those raw? Like, I've never heard of that.
Well, okay, so pumpkin is, for me, I really like to, I'll skin the pumpkin and I will blend it in the blender with like tomatoes, something to kind of, I'm weird, I don't put water or other liquids in the blender. I use other fruits to be the liquid. And so I'll use like tomatoes or something watery to blend it down and get it to a nice texture. And then it'll be like a creamy pumpkin soup. Eggplant you can marinate, it's like a sponge. So like overnight stuff. But sure.
I was wondering, do you feel like you need to eat a lot of quantity compared to eating, say, like a low-fat, like do you need to eat a lot of quantity in the fruitarian diet versus, say, low-fat plant-based diet?
Yes, quantity, that depends entirely upon the fruits or vegetables that you're eating. If you're just eating giant salads, you need to eat a lot of salad to get your calories up. But if you're eating fruits, and especially sweet fruits like bananas and dates, those are super calorie dense. So your volume doesn't necessarily have to be big. It depends on how you do it. But if I like one medjool date is 60 calories, and if I eat like 5 and then add medjool dates to tomatoes and blend them up and just be like a tomato date salad dressing, I can turn an entire bowl of veggies into like a very high calorie meal very fast. So it depends entirely upon how you choose your fruits and vegetables, how you prepare them. For me, I like to do it as simple as possible. I don't like to spend like all day eating. But for me right now, like especially the last few months, it's been watermelon season and peach season and nectarines, and so I've just been eating them straight out of the rind, and I'll just eat until I'm full and then come back for more. So I truthfully don't think about it very much anymore, but back in the day it was a bigger concern. And I wasn't really sure how to do it, but now I'm just like, okay, I'm hungry, let's go eat some watermelon. Yum, 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 yum. And then a few hours later, I'm like, okay, I'd like some more. But I let my body sort of guide me on that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
As long as I'm able to continue lifting in the gym, I feel like I'm nutritionally fueled.
Sorry, how long does it take you to eat one meal?
It can take anywhere from 5 minutes to a few hours.
Okay.
One thing I do like to do is have a giant salad in the evenings sometimes. Like, I don't know why, but I like the savory stuff in the evenings. I feel like it calms me down a little more, so I want to have more greens. But then, like, I feel like the giant salads, I don't like to force it all in. I like to eat a little and come back. Eat a little, you know, I'll take hours sometimes.
Oh, okay.
But it's like many small meals most of the time.
Yeah.
I don't like the feeling of being overly full. Some people do like that, and actually when I was going through, I would say 5 years ago when I was really transitioning, binging was something I was coming off of. So that really, really full feeling was good. And I could eat a lot and have that really, really full feeling. But it's like a whole lot of cucumbers aren't going to really hurt me like the other stuff was. So it was safer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I recently also went on a fruit diet.
Awesome.
And I found that like one day I ate like a mixture of fruit.
Yeah.
And my stomach hurt.
Yeah.
So, is that normal?
Okay, so yes and no. It depends. There's many factors. It could be underripe fruits. It could be the particular mixture. There are these rules of like food combining. If you've ever looked up food combining, well, for fruitarians, it's like you don't want to mix your sweet fruits with your acid fruits. And so, like when I was saying earlier about the dates and the tomatoes are an acid fruit. Dates are a sweet fruit. I'm not supposed to do that. I totally do it anyway. I feel like they're guidelines, and for some people it can really mess you up. And I feel like if certain combinations of foods can really affect adversely some people. And so sometimes following the food combining guidelines can be helpful. Like you only eat melons alone, or just no fats mixed with fruits. Those sorts of things. But if you're combining a bunch of different things, if you try to do like all the acid fruits together, like I like, this is weird, but strawberries and tomatoes blended together as like a salad dressing. I find it salty, savory, and sweet. They're both acid fruits. They combine well together for me. I don't get cramps. But for example, some people might be affected by the dates and the tomatoes dressing because that's a sweet fruit and an acid fruit. So the guidelines can kind of help figure out where you're sensitive, but if you are having continued issues, mono meals are great. A mono meal is like one particular food for a whole meal. And so like my whole big bowl of peaches or whatever it was that I was taking to the gym, that's a mono meal. It's one food per meal, and that is considered to be the gentlest for digestion. But mono meals can help, especially, and there's issues sometimes with the gut microbiome. Some people have a lot of unique issues. Sometimes there's even food allergies. I mean, there's so many factors. But definitely play with it. The more simple, I find the more simple, the easier it is, and I don't have to think about it or worry about it. So I prefer mono meals. And if I'm gonna be naughty, I try to have it as the last meal, because that way everything else that I'd eaten in the day earlier in the day is already moving through and nothing is backlogged. So if I'm gonna have any issues, I want it to be the last meal. That's my experimentation meal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you eat potatoes?
I don't like the way they make me feel.
Repeat the question, please?
Oh, potatoes. Do I eat potatoes? I did experiment with them recently. I don't like the way they make me feel. They make me feel very tired. And for me, when fatigue is a huge issue, I don't like to sacrifice that. I'd rather eat something that I know is going to give me energy and not make me tired. So I'd rather eat a peach than a potato. But I won't ever be the kind of fruitarian that stands up here and tells you all cooked foods are toxic. They're going to give you cancer. Potatoes are evil. You know, I don't do that. There are fruitarians who do that, but I don't do that. I don't believe the science supports saying that. So, yeah.
Do you mix, excuse me, do you mix vegetables with fruits?
Yes, yes.
Because I've heard that when you combine ingredients with fruits, it's a bad combination for your digestion.
I don't think so. I've never experienced that. I think having fruits with vegetables, for me, fruits bring out the savoriness and the saltiness of the greens. And so because I don't use salt, because I don't use the flavor enhancers, my tongue is now very sensitive, and I really appreciate and enjoy the flavors of I'll take some mango and wrap it in some greens and just eat it like a taco. And for me, that's yum. Like, it's salty, it's savory, it's satiating, it's entertaining for me. But there's only 2 ingredients. But I mean, for most people that sounds like, wow, that sounds like the most boring thing ever. But for me, it's just like, it's taco night.
How about eggplant? You said you eat raw eggplant, but traditionally they say, put salt on it so it draws out the bitterness. How do you do your eggplant?
So eggplant is, it's really not a huge or a huge frequent thing. Like, it's spongy. One of the biggest mistakes that I made in the beginning of my raw journey was I just cut up an eggplant on a plate and tried to eat it. And that was just disgusting. I've had it where I cut it up and I will blend up tomatoes and maybe a little bit of garlic and onion and just marinate it. And I think I might even have a video on it, but it was a very old video. But I was playing with another fruitarian, and we were in the kitchen, and we blended up some tomatoes, onions, and garlic, and marinated this eggplant with it. And it actually turned out okay. That was tolerable, but for the most part, eggplant isn't really a primary thing that I like to do all the time. I wouldn't call it fuel for the gym or anything. Yes.
Have you considered fasting or intermittent fasting in conjunction with your therapy?
Very much so when I did. I actually didn't, I feel like I had a lot of time to talk about that today, but about 6 months into my raw journey, I started playing with fasting. I started with 1-day water fasting. I went up to 3. My longest water fast is 14 days. I don't like to go beyond around that point because I feel like it just messes up the gut microbiome too much on the refeeding end. I felt like fasting was very helpful for reducing the inflammation symptoms. And whenever I had a flare-up, a really bad flare-up, and usually it was my own fault because I would eat, I would experiment and play with the fat intake again. And, if my leg would go out the next day and I'd be like, oh, I have to do something now, I might water fast at that point. So yes, I absolutely did use some water fasting. I want to say I just do intermittent fasting. And this is bad of me, but I don't like to eat a lot in the morning. But I have been cutting my food intake off at 6 p.m. For the last several months. And I feel like I'm getting within the 6 to 8 hour window of intermittent fasting already without even really trying. And then I did a 68 hour water fast 2 weeks, a week or 2 weeks ago. Yeah, I fasted during my 5th year anniversary of the hospital. Yeah, just because I was like, you know what, this is a thing. I need to, I feel like that for me is the most extreme that I go for extra detoxing or cleansing or whatever. So.
Pardon me, I was interrupted in the part of your talk where you were in the hospital.
Yes.
How long were you bedridden in the hospital, unable to use your left arm and leg?
Okay, so I was in the hospital for 4 days, and then I went home, and I actually had to have a nurse come home, come visit me at my house for the next 2 days to continue getting a 5-day steroid infusion. I was not able to use my left side fully. I don't feel like I fully recovered for like 6 months to a year. My neurologist would tell me that my recovery was extremely fast. I felt like it was forever. I felt, and for my leg, it was like I could stand on it, but I couldn't like bring it forward. I had to throw my body. I was like, you know, I had to bring my body forward, and then I could kind of, but it was just stationary. I was doing that for a while. I had to relearn how to walk properly. The next, I'm gonna say 3 months after the hospital, it was, and by the way, I got a prescription for physical therapy and I tore it up. I went to the gym and I got a personal trainer, and I wanted to not be treated differently. I wanted to be challenged. And so for a while in the parking lot in the gym, it was my trainer on one side and my partner on the other, and I was learning to walk in the parking lot. And I want to say I started running again within, it was very light running. It was like 4 months or 5 months in, and then I felt like I couldn't fully get back for like a year. But then even at the year point, it's like it comes and goes. And so it was just this little roller coaster of recovery. And there, I mean, from my perspective, it felt like 10 years. But from the neurologist's perspective, he was like, wow, I've never seen anyone recover as quickly as you. And then I told him about my diet, and then he decided to tell me that it was just, oh, well, this must be just a fluke or something. He didn't like vegans. I didn't go back to him after about my year checkup, so. But yeah, it was rough.
So related to that, like, I know you had mentioned that you know, read on the internet about the raw food diet, but what was like the convincing factor that you want to try this after you were coming out of the hospital at that time?
Well, so here's the other thing. In the hospital with multiple sclerosis, it wasn't just my body that was affected at the time. My logical thinking centers were affected too. It was really hard to keep thoughts in my head. And so honestly, I think I just got lucky with that, because I read it on the internet and it made some sense to me, and I just threw all in with it, and it just happened to inadvertently teach me about eating a whole food plant-based diet through this extreme measure. And like looking back, it didn't make a lot of sense at the time, but I just believed. And I don't know why, I said, I made a decision that like I didn't like where I was, and I didn't want to contribute to my suffering anymore. And if for whatever reason, anything I was doing was contributing, I didn't want to do it anymore. And so I actually quit alcohol and caffeine on the day that I went in the hospital. Thank you. That was rough.
There's a documentary out there called The Real Truth, and it covers a lot about MS and the problems and how to treat it.
Cold blue?
Real Truth. Real Truth, yeah.
And Code Blue is good too.
It was one of those, but they were doing stem cell transplants and then vitamin D and then diet and kind of all of them.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I feel like perhaps that's one of the reasons why water fasting helped me a little bit. Was I don't know if this is true or not, but they say it's the cell regeneration that happens during water fasting can be kind of like stem cell therapy. But I don't know if that's.
Yeah, it is true, because your body will take energy to change your food into useful material. Once you digest the food, then it builds up your immune system.
Yeah.
Your body works on that, get your immune system up if you're fasting.
I think I was just eating the wrong foods, even as a vegan. So, yes.
Dr. John McDougall has built on the work of Dr. Roy Swank about
Yes.
how low-fat, vegan, whole food, plant-based diets help reverse symptoms of MS. How important do you personally feel for your case was the low-fat aspect of your recovery?
That's one of the most important things. And not just low fat, y'all, but like no overt fats. Which is weird, even for raw vegans and fruitarians. Like they don't do that. Like that's not a common thing. Most people just saturate their raw vegan dishes with nuts and seeds, avocado, coconut meat, and tahini is a very popular one. But like it was extremely important to me, and I do appreciate that Dr. McDougall is continuing Dr. Swank's work on that. I definitely can advocate that from my personal experience, not just low fat, but avoiding all overt fats was really critical for me.
Can you think of a mechanism physiologically of why your blood sugars improved on a low-fat diet?
Yes. The fat blocks the glucose from absorbing into the, I want to say it right, intramyocellular, the lipids. Basically your muscle cells, when you're eating a fatty diet, the fat will block the absorption of the sugar into muscle cells, and it causes high blood sugar. But it's not the fruit's fault, it's the fat's fault for not allowing the sugar to move through the body as it's supposed to. And so by avoiding the overt fats, my body was able to dump the excess fat in the muscle cells, and I don't get high or low blood sugar anymore. It's incredibly stable whether I'm eating a lower calorie day or a higher calorie day. It doesn't matter how much fruit I eat, I'm never going to get a high blood sugar or low blood sugar. And that's funny because when I first went raw and I started having plates of fruits in the office kitchen, I'm a legal secretary by trade, and one of the attorneys, this old senior partner, he's like, all that fruit's gonna make you have diabetes. And I was like, okay, we'll see.
And would you say that eating a low-fat diet, would you say that eating dietary fat caused insulin resistance?
Yes, absolutely. And a lot of the raw vegans, long-term raw vegans and fruitarians will say, oh, well, you get used to it, and then you can eat an avocado and it's fine. And for me, I just haven't found that to be true. I need to be very consistent for my life. And I'm okay with it too. Like I don't miss it anymore. It's been so long, I don't care. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, she was next. I'm so sorry.
I've been told by dentists my entire life I had a very small mouth, very crowded, and teeth were very disgusting. Who helped find out how that affected your health?
Oh, well, Dr. Linda Carney referred me to Dr. Gonzalez, who's a plant-based dentist. And he did a CT scan in his office, and he can actually measure your molars, your throat, all of that. And so yeah, that was Dr. Gonzalez in Round Rock. Yeah, sorry.
How are your most recent blood work?
Ooh, that's a good question. I bet she knows the answer. So my most recent blood work, I actually cried, because my cholesterol is now under the amazing 150 total range, the heart attack proof range. Okay, so this is something I didn't feel like I had time for, but it's so important. My cholesterol as a vegan, as a raw vegan, as a low fat fruitarian was high. It was high. And I didn't understand it because I didn't have any fat, I didn't have any diet, there was nothing, there was no reason.
And she was working out.
And I was working out all the time, right? I was like, I think my lowest that I ever saw was like 176 or something like that.
Wow.
For a long-term person who follows low fat, that was insane. And it was all, but now I'm under 150 on my last blood work. My TSH is good. It's under 1. Yeah.
As of why? Why do you think these changes occurred?
All of it had to do with the breathing and the airway and the jaw. I got the sinus surgery to correct the upper airways. The lower airways, I'm sleeping with a CPAP. I know that's so taboo, a raw vegan fruitarian sleeping with a CPAP. But, apparently fruit can't cure everything. But now that I'm sleep with a CPAP, got the sinus surgery done. There are other options. You can have another surgery to change the shape of your jaw. I'm just not interested in massively invasive surgery. I'm aware of my narcolepsy now, and I have a sleep hygiene schedule that is, I don't mess with that. I'm on a very consistent schedule, and because of doing all of those things, I believe that it dropped my cortisol levels. I believe that was the key. Because that's the only thing that's different, y'all. I mean, I've been very consistent on my diet, and I finally got my cholesterol down. I finally got my blood pressure is back to normal. My thyroid's coming down. It's like everything is working out because of addressing the sleeping and breathing problems. Even when you're doing, and that's my whole thing, is even when you're doing everything right, by the book, as extreme as you can go, water fasting, fruit only, or fruits and vegetables, and it's like, whatever it is, you can do everything right and still have problems because of things that are outside of your control.
Now you can't do anything about the architecture.
No, can't do anything about the architecture. That's there.
And yes, you probably have a genetic strike against you for your architecture, but what else do you think, as you were being raised, as you were, let's say that you were breastfed, I don't know, but if you were weaned off breast milk, what did they feed you that made your jaw grow so narrow and your airway so narrow?
It was meat and dairy. That's the other thing, is we believe that because, and I lived on a farm in Texas. Like, we had meat and dairy. It was very local. And I believe that, and I believe Dr. Carney is correct, that because I was fed meat and dairy from a young age, and because I was also eating fast food, and I had a very unhealthy diet, because protein, but I feel like that also contributed to the inflammation in my passages, in my airways, in my sinuses, inflamed and helped deform them during the years when I was developing. And so not just at birth, but also along the way, as I was growing and developing, it was a significant factor.
May I just interject a little, just for the new people, and thank you for indulging me. So when the baby is fed, the baby's coming off the breast milk, the baby's fed the solids, and then getting the meat, dairy, eggs, oil, the upper airway, the nose and sinuses, that congests up, and it's easier for the little baby to open the mouth during sleep. And how many of us have seen little babies with the mouth open during sleep? So the tongue falls away from the hard palate, where it's in its normal position, it falls away from that, and that makes the jaw, instead of growing into a nice full U shape, it grows narrow into a V. That makes crooked teeth needing orthodontic braces, in later life. And it leads to mouth breathing, and it leads to a narrow, no room for the wisdom teeth. How common is that, to have the wisdom teeth out, and later TMJ problems. And then as you get into your, past age 30, and things start wrinkling and sagging on the outside, they do on the inside also. So the older you get, the more closed the airway gets, especially if you had a lot of alcohol and caffeine, which are really toxic to the soft tissues, and you wrinkle and sag more when you have alcohol and caffeine in your diet. And your airway's closing even more because you're not firm, after age, 30 something, 40. And then you start to get more airway problems related after age, 34, 35, and that's when we see them. And that's why people need to understand the importance of airway, because like she said, you can do the diet and the exercise and take the toxins out perfectly, but if you don't get the sleep thing right, and you gotta breathe well during sleep, that's the problem. So what's your bedtime?
Oh. So, he's laughing because I make him do it with me.
Make me
No,
do it with
actually,
you. I volunteered.
I came home from after seeing Dr. Carney, and I said, I'm basically never gonna see you again. And he was like, you know what? I'm gonna do it with you. And so we've been doing it together. 6 o'clock, my alarm goes off on my phone, and it says no food. No more food after 6 o'clock.
6 p.m.?
Yes. 8 p.m., another alarm on my phone goes off, and no more electronics. So I don't have any computers, cell phones, blue light TV, nothing around me that is electronic. And then, so we have a nice leisure walk.
We do a 5K walk in the evenings.
Yeah, and then we have between 9 and 10. And usually, especially this week, I've been down like at 9:15. But my goal is to be asleep, like legit under by 10 every night, because between 10 and 12 or midnight, that's the prime time restorative sleep cycles, right?
Right. Good things happen in the 2 hours of sleep before midnight. 2 hours of sleep before midnight are worth 4 hours of sleep after midnight when it comes to all the good biochemistry, the ghrelin and the leptin and the cortisol, all that good restorative stuff.
I believe that this is why I am now under heart attack proof cholesterol now. And my thyroid's coming back, my blood pressure's coming back. I'm now dropping the weight that I gained rapidly despite being totally consistent on my diet.
Despite taking steroids after the surgery.
Yeah. Oh, actually, I declined the prednisone.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Good.
I got out of that one. but there were steroids. There were nasal spray steroids. There were steroids. It's just I didn't take as many as I was supposed to take. But I did that with doctor consent. I didn't just not take my stuff.
Very good. All right. Any more questions? Well, you've been a very patient audience. It's time for open mic if anyone has any announcements or questions. And I would like to start off with one for Susan Elizondo. Dr. Susan Elizondo is our plant-based optometrist. Oh, good, she's still here, and she can tell her own. Do you want to give your own? Or do you want me to give your announcement about your?
Yes.
All right, hi. I have two announcements. One is that some people were very nice and brought me meals over the summer, and I have 2 bagfuls of Tupperware. So if you would like your Tupperware back, please come see me. The second announcement is my husband and I are buying a house, but our lease on our current apartment doesn't end until July 31st. So if you need or are looking for a place in Austin, our apartment lease is up July 31st. It's in the Le Montreux apartment complex. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 911 square feet for $13.10 a month. We would love for you to take over our lease. So please contact me if you need a place to live. And it would be, we're closing on October 14th. And so if we could have at least a week after that, before we have to move. And then I think the other thing that I always usually announce is just the restaurants there. In case you're not aware, there are restaurants that have oil-free menus in Austin. There is Astor's Ethiopian, which you really have to call ahead for that one because there hasn't been enough demand, so sometimes they actually don't make it. The Beer Plant, ATX Food Co., Casa de Luz, and Zyka Indian Contemporary Cuisine. And for Zyka, they don't have a menu for that one, but you can ask and they can always accommodate you.
Very nice area of town to live in. Her lease is so low, it's just unbelievable. It's probably the lowest rent for an apartment of that quality that I've ever seen in Austin, being here since 2005.
What part of town is that?
It's in the north. I don't have it memorized. What's it, Le Montreux?
Northwest, it's off of Mopac and Steck.
What's the name of your apartment complex?
Le Montreux.
Le Montreux. Le Montreux. All right. John. Yes.
By all means.
Please tell the people, since this is your first time here, and thank you for coming, please tell the people who you are.
I will. I'm John McCready, and I have been a whole plant for about 40 years. And, I always find it interesting what causes the shift? What causes that realization, right? is it instinctual or is something happening in my life? My whole life has been whole plant based, and I built an international brand in the animal healthcare industry. And I love everybody, but I love that group of people, and I love their humor because they were meat-based, big time. And so they found out that I was whole plant, so they nicknamed me. And I thought it was rather humorous. And that is, if you ever go out for breakfast, lunch, or dinner with John, you are going to graze. And so I was referred to as the grazer. So a couple of announcements. One is that an expression of whole plant, and I really appreciate, Sean, the invitation to come here, is that we live in a very interesting time. I am the founder of Habitat Suites Hotel, which was 4 or 5 months ago, thank you, was selected as one of the top earth-friendly hotels in the world. And then East-West Center, you know, I have a lot of heroes in my life, but East-West Center, we then migrated from East-West Center to Casa de Luz, which is such a beautiful expression of health in so many different ways. In the architecture, when you go in our community center, you'll see that most of them are round tables or rectangle tables because architecture does or does not support community. And so I sold off a bunch of companies, and about 14 months ago I decided to kick back, and I bought a home out on Lake Travis. And then I was in this incredible sanctuary, and there was this metaphysical teacher by the name of Robert Brummett, an author, and he said, look outside the sanctuary and look at all the trees and the plants, and you will see divine intelligence impregnated in all of those trees and plants. And I suddenly found myself sitting up, and I heard a voice, and that voice said, John, your life has been to this point, and you are ready to give expression to something. And so 14 months later, on September the 12th, I launched The Village. And The Village is part of a trilogy. It's called Reclaim Trilogy. And The Village is hosted, and will be hosted for a while, at Habitat Suites Hotel. And every Thursday, 11:30 in the morning until 1 o'clock, there's 3 aspects to The Village. And the first is a whole plant potluck offering for 30 minutes or so. The next 30 minutes is presenters. And there are presenters all the way out into December already. And what is Reclaim Trilogy? Summary, it's the reclamation of our health and well-being. It's the reclamation of our Mother Earth's health and well-being. And it's the reclamation of our health and well-being of our companion animals that are tortured. That's what Reclaim Trilogy is. The other part of the trilogy, and the final part of the village is this. All those years, Casa, and all those years of being in a community, I realized in the science, by the way, and Reclaim Trilogy is all science-based, I realized that there are more people dying of isolation and loneliness than people smoking cigarettes. So this here is so critically important. And so I will be here every time that this is a potluck to participate. I will also, with Reclaim Trilogy in the Village, in the Divine Diet, Whole Plant Intelligence, all of that will integrate this beautiful work that everyone has gathered and put together. And then on October the 1st, I will be delivering a talk at IONS, and that's the Institutes for Noetic Science. And it's called Body, Mind, Spirit Revolution. Quite frankly, it is modest on my behalf to say that we require a revolution. We do. We need a major revolution on many different levels. And the only way that we're going to have a revolution is that we collaborate. We waken up our consciousness and gather together, and in our collective strength, things will change. And that is starting to bubble. It's starting to happen. But we're running out of time.
Yep.
And I'm not a fearmonger. I'm about hope. But I look at science. I study science. And I know we're running out of time. We're at a precipice. And we're running out of choices. This is the right choice. Don't ever allow anybody to confuse you that there is confusion in the science world among researchers and scientists. There's no confusion at all in how to reclaim our health and well-being. There's not.
Plant-based diet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you for speaking that. That's right, I am. TrueHealthInitiative.org, headed up by Dr. David Katz, is a beautiful expression of that. So you're invited to the talk. You come with a C, a capital C, that stands for the word courage. And you'll see me at the beginning of every talk. You'll see a screen that says, I am not original. I'm not original. Everything that I say is linked to what came before me. And so that's incredibly important. And the other distinction I make at the beginning of a talk, especially that requires courage, is this phenomena of already always listening. Listen to instead of listen from. It's a huge distinctive difference. Because if you listen to, you'll hear the possibility. But if you listen from, you won't hear the newness. You won't hear that possibility. So thank you for this. Thank you for the invite. And I look forward to getting to know everybody. If you want to know about Reclaim Trilogy, simply go to reclaimtrilogy.com, then click on the village, and then one of my favorite years in history, my history, this time around, is 1969. And so you'll see the village happenings, the village voice, and on the village happenings, tomorrow, right, the game changers. Right? Awesome. And may that help to contribute towards that shift, right? And then on November the 9th, as a happening, we're all going out to the Blackwood Land Institute in Hempstead, Texas, where there is just an amazing being by the name of Kat Conti. And what she's done on that 33 acres since 1986 is amazing, and how she's teaching the children whole plant, how to grow, how to harvest, how to cook, bringing the kids back into the kitchens, you know? That kind of work is phenomenal. So it's a harvest hoedown. There will be music and just an amazing celebration. So thank you for allowing me to share, and thank you for this moment together. Yes?
Where is this program on October 1st?
Yes, so if one is familiar with Unity Church of the Hills, which is on Anderson, but when you go to reclaimtrilogy.com and you go to the village happenings, you just scan all the happenings and you'll see October 1st, gives you the address, the time, and everything. But it's there, and it's in Friendship Hall, and it starts at 7 p.m. Thank you very much, everybody.
John, what is your favorite restaurant in Austin?
Oh, well, it is Casa de Luz, yes, which means House of Light. And I want to tell you the burning flame behind Casa de Luz is my best friend, my business partner for 38 years, and that's Eduardo Longoria, and his nickname is Wyo. And you'll find him there every day, 7 days a week, and he's a beautiful human being.
And why do you feel so good about Casa de Luz?
Well, there's multiple reasons. One is that it's another village. and that is that it allows human expression in so many different forms, so the diversity is there that feeds us and gives us life, it gives expression to life, and it, most importantly, it creates community, and there's a mindfulness there, and you can see it, you can feel it. When you come from Toomey Road and start walking to the community center at the back, you're embraced by nature and all of its healing qualities and its beauty. And then when you find yourself at a table, you will not know who will end up at that table. And I tell you, who will show up is just a huge, beautiful being that is full of light and full of nourishment, because it's not just nourishment from our food, it's nourishing in communion. So that's what I love about Casa de Luz.
Very good, very good. How many of you think that Casa de Luz could be thought of as his baby? Yeah, that's his, Casa de Luz is his baby. Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. All right. And how many of you know where to buy tickets for the Game Changers movie? How many of you know where to buy, where one would go to buy tickets? Raise your hand if you know where to go to buy a ticket for the Game Changers movie to be held tomorrow. Does anyone here know where to buy tickets?
You have to buy it online.
Okay, no, I'm not asking. I'm asking for a show of hands. How many of you know where to go to? Raise your hand if you know. Okay, because we're not going to call out the people who don't know. Now, for the people who don't know, go to thegamechangersmovie.com and buy a ticket, because it's only one night and this movie will blow your mind. It is a young man's movie. For young men, and notice how few young men, I mean, yes, we've got young men here, and thank goodness for that, but how few young men there are who know the benefits, the health benefits, the athletic benefits of the plant-based diet. If there is a young man in your life, a brother, a son, a grandson, a boyfriend, a friend, a roommate, bring that young man to the Game Changers movie, because he will have his eyes open and it'll be great. It'll be great. And so where's everybody going to go see it? Patty, where are you going to see it? Okay.
Sorry.
Where are you going?
The Arbor.
The Arbor. Okay. Where's everybody else going?
Rigo.
Okay. Okay, South Park. Okay, very good. So it's there. Yeah, Vicky.
Well, we're from Seguin, so we're going to go, but we're going to go to the Live Oak Regional Cinema, and they had only 2 seats left as of yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, San Antonio is just about. I've heard that some of the theaters here in Austin have sold out. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
you gotta look.
So you need to see it. If you don't get to see it, powers that be, I'm sure they're going to put it out some other way, because it needs to be seen. As soon as it's out where you can purchase it, I don't care what they're doing, I'm buying it.
Oh yeah.
There's too many people that need to see it, and I'm going to force them to sit.
Yeah, and they're going to make a bleeped out version for schools and churches and children. Yeah, I'm telling you, this is a young man's movie. Okay, so shut your ears to the F-bombs. Sean, what year was it that the Game Changers film crew came to our office and filmed our patients?
2015, I think.
13, 14.
It's a long time ago.
This
They've been
movie's
working
a
on this
long
movie
time.
for a long
And
time.
we didn't make the cut. I'm not in the movie. My patients aren't in the movie. But I mean, they cut so much. They had like 600 hours worth of film that they could have. Yeah. And so they got to boil it down to 90 minutes or whatever. But this movie is amazing. I mean, it'll just blow your socks off. Yes, ma'am.
It will change the world.
Tomorrow.
One day only, across the nation.
We've seen it twice.
In the previews,
It's
went to
powerful.
the previews.
We've seen it at 2 different conventions.
Very powerful. What it's about Olympic athletes who are plant-based and who thrive. It's about the strongest man in the world who is plant-based. Okay, spoiler alert. Can you picture a man and he's holding this iron thingy and it's got this crossbar that goes across the shoulders, and there's a platform for 3 men to stand on this side, and a platform for 3 men to stand on that side. 6 men, okay, full size. One of them is Rip Esselstyn, and and he's not a a short guy. You know, so, and the strongest man in the world is walking down the road carrying 6 men on his shoulders.
Say what he said in the trailer. How could somebody as strong as you, how could somebody as strong as an ox not eat meat? And he said, have you ever seen an ox eat meat?
Have you ever seen an ox eat meat? She said, they asked him, how could somebody as strong as you, strong as an ox not eat meat? And he says, have you ever seen an ox eat meat? So there you go. Very good. All right. Do we have any other questions or announcements of people who would like to?
Or testimonies.
Yes, or testimonies, yes. And here is Chef Karen Osborne, and her website is myfoodfitnessandfun.com.
I'll be really quick.
Isn't that a wonderful? I love that book.
Yeah, I am a Food for Life instructor with the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. And you guys know Candace, she's not able to be here today, but she's opening her home again. So I don't have to rent a space. So I'm able to offer the class, a 4-series class. It's going to be over 2 Sundays, the last Sunday in October and the first Sunday in November. And I'm going to give everyone a copy of this book that attends this class.
Wow.
Because I don't have to rent the space. So there is a charge for the class, because we have to pay for the food and the materials. But you can sign up on my Facebook page. It's My Food, Fitness, and Fun. And I'm only taking 15 because it's a nice intimate class. It's going to be fun. The science is presented by Neil Barnard. He's very nice to look at. He's very entertaining. And there'll be videos. It's interactive. There's a discussion. There's little quizzes, not for a grade. And you get to eat the food, and you get one of these books.
Karen, how many of your previous gigs like this have sold out? All of them, okay? All of them.